All right, everybody's back. Almost. The next chapter that we're going to do in the book is chapter 9. We are jumping ahead because chapter 9 is on layers and naming and moving layers, and that's pretty darn important as you're making things. And you're going to have your first project I'm going to assign today that's going to be due next week, and I want you to understand layers and how to properly name your file. So let's, in Illustrator, open or navigate to lesson 9 in the files. And I want you to go to the start file and say open. All right. Over at the right-hand side, I want you to look at the layers panel, and I want you to see that right now there's something called layer 1, and there is a disclosure arrow to the right of it. And if we click that, it's going to open up other layers underneath it. Oh, the font thing. If you get that, I wish I would have, but I've opened this before. Don't say find fonts, because they're already checked on the right, and they are fonts that are in Adobe Typekit. So go ahead and say find fonts, and or activate. I forget which one it is. I wish that would have popped up. Activate?
Yeah, I did activate.
Okay, activate fonts. So they're from Adobe Typekit, which you have as part of your membership subscription. So once it works, where it shows that it found them, click done, I assume, and those fonts should show up. So the fonts that this was built in, or that they used, are available on Adobe Typekit, which you have access to. If that didn't happen, I'm just looking at over your shoulder, I see yours are all highlighted in pink. That means that that's not the font. And the problem is that if it replaces with a different font, words might not fit, letters are bigger. So why don't you close that file and open it again and go through that process, because you should be able to link to the fonts. Anything that's highlighted in pink means the font is missing. So activate, maybe, instead of find. Is that my bad? Okay. And then your screen should look like this. Good. Okay. So again, your layers panel over on the right. Click to open the layers panel, not the properties, so that you can see that. And then twirl open layer 1 to notice that there's a bunch of layers inside there. Twirl open group 1 to see that there's a bunch of things inside there. This other group, there's a bunch of stuff. This other group, and this other group. So, and there's even one more I can twirl open. Here's all the layers that exist. They are named layer 1, group, 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 path, 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 compound, compound. If you were working at a business with somebody and they gave you this file, you would cry, because how did they organize it? What the hell does it mean? Where are things? It's bad, right? So when you work on a file and build a file, you're going to be naming layers logically for you and anybody else that might ever touch the file. You're going to be putting sub-layers underneath it, maybe folders underneath those. Everything's going to have a name and make sense. And it's going to be clean. And ultimately, you can twirl these shut and probably only have 2 or 4 main ones with other folders nested inside of them that make sense. This is going to be a weird exercise because this is done. And we're going to take it from this hot mess and we're going to rename it and put it in appropriate layers and name things correctly. So normally you do this as you build, you name correctly and store things correctly. We're just going backwards. We're taking a messy file and cleaning it up. So let's get started. Missing fonts. Let's do a fit all in the window. So Command Option 0. We see we have 2 artboards and we have a photo just hanging off on the left in the work area. What we're doing is a mock-up for a phone to show how their app could look. So we have the front of the phone screen right here, and then we'll be doing something over here on the right as well. So layers, what we opened up over here is this hot mess, are invisible folders basically that let us arrange everything. Just like in Photoshop and like you know in Illustrator, it has stacking order. So bottom to the top. So if the picture of the house is at the bottom of the stack and everything else is covering it up, we wouldn't even see it. So stacking order is important. Also notice layer 1, if I twirl that shut, there's a blue bar to the left of it, and when I twirl it open, yep.
I'm having issues with this font suite. It's not giving me, actually giving him the option to activate fonts.
Okay. Let me think.
Because when I did, I hit find and it gave the option to activate.
Right. Can you close the file and start over? Show me what. Because there might not have been check marks. Put check marks to the right in the activate box. Thank you. What's going on? Are you logged into your account?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they just weren't checked. Yep. Same thing. Okay. Okay, so we have all these different layers, and I mentioned that there's a blue bar to the left of the word layer 1. That means that anytime you click on anything, whoops, I got to use my selection tool, it's going to have a highlighting bounding box of blue. That signifies that it's on layer 1. So if I had layer 2 and a red bar here, if I clicked on something on my artboard and it lit up in red, it would be a visual way of me knowing, oh, that's on layer 2 because all layer 2 is red. Right now, everything is in layer 1 and everything is a mess, so we don't need to worry about that too much. All right. Collapse that top option so that it just says layer 1. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start renaming so that they make sense. So we're going to double click on the words layer 1 and we're going to name it phone body and hit enter. Now we want to create a new layer. So we're going to go down to the bottom of our layers panel. The far right icon is create new layer. Click on that. It created a new layer on top, stacking order, and it made it red, and it's called layer 2. We want to change the name from layer 2, so double click on it and call this phone content. So right now everything lives in that one layer, and ultimately we're going to start moving things out into other layers that make more sense. So anything that is the content on the phone is going to get moved. All right. Next thing we're going to do is create a new layer and name it all in one step. So while we click on that new layer button, we're going to hold down the option key. So hold option, click on new layer, and it automatically pops up with the layer options where we can name it right here and some other options. We're going to call this one menu icons. Notice that the color it's assigning is green. If you wanted to change it, you could. And here are the specifics about this layer. We're going to show it, it's going to print, it's going to show up on a preview. If we wanted to lock this layer, we could. If we wanted this layer to be a template, we could tell it to do that. If for some reason we didn't want this layer to print, we could uncheck it here. So this is where you have extra options. Leave as is and just say OK, and we now have a new layer called menu options up here. Once you have a layer, if you wanted to duplicate it, there's a way of doing that as well. So make sure that menu icons is the highlighted and selected layer in your layer panel up here. And then we're going to go to the layers panel menu, which is these 3 lines in the top right corner. Click on that. And we're going to choose duplicate menu icons. Right now it's empty, but sometimes you have stuff in it and it's an easy way of doing it. Notice that by duplicating it, it kept the same green color and the same name, but the word copy was added. If you want to be able to read more of your information over here, take this window, wait till you get the double arrows, and drag it out to the left a little so that you can read everything it says. We're going to double click on the name menu icons copy, and we're going to name it design content. All right, we now have 4 different layers that have no content on them at the moment. and we're going to create some sublayers underneath some of them. So it's a layer nested inside of that for organization purposes. All right, make sure that phone content is the layer that's highlighted. And then at the bottom, instead of make new layer, there's a little icon to the left of it that has an arrow and it says create a new sublayer. So click on that. Notice that made a layer that's nested inside of that. It's bumped over to the right, meaning it's part of this phone content layer. We're going to double click on the name and give it a proper name of main menu and hit return. Okay, we're now going to hit this disclosure triangle to close up the phone content. Yep.
Are you adding that extra?
Highlight that layer and then go down and click on the icon that says create a new sublayer. It's the second one. Yep. Yep. And when you're done doing that, twirl that one shut. Close that folder. So now we have some folder families that we're ready to work with. We're going to edit some layers and objects. Again, this is a file that's pre-made. It's just a mess and we're cleaning it up. So by rearranging things in the layers, we also change the stacking order. And sometimes it's really hard to find. Like right now, everything lives on this phone body layer. If we twirl it open, that's where everything is. It's a hot mess. I'd actually like you to twirl it open. And if yours are all open like mine are, twirl them shut. So I want you to close up all of these things and then ultimately twirl shut phone body. By doing this, you keep your screen a little bit cleaner. It's not as overwhelming and you kind of know, okay, these are my 4 main areas that I'm putting things. Now, how we figure out where something lives in a layer can really be a challenge. So there's an easy way of doing that with your selection tool. We're going to click on this green rectangle down at the bottom here. So when we click on that green rectangle, you can tell that it's picking the rectangle and the text box that's in white. That's also selected. Now if we want to know where that lives, we go over to our layers panel, and at the very bottom in our icons we have a magnifying glass. Click on that. That's the locate object. And it automatically spins open the folders and subfolders. And then it puts a blue box to the right of them. So it's telling you it's in the main layer called phone body. It's also in this group. And specifically, it's this piece of these 2 groups. Okay? So it found it for you. So in the layers panel, these squares that we have over here on the right, are selection indicators. They're showing us what's selected and it's on a blue layer. This group name right here, the one that's selected with the selection indicator, it's green and white, it says group. We're going to double click and give that a much better name. We're going to call that description and hit return. So when there's content nested underneath it, it puts it in a holding layer that's called a group and shows all the pieces, what they look like together. And if you twirl it open, you see the individual pieces. Renaming a group doesn't ungroup it, you just rename it. On your artboards, click away to deselect. And we're going to close the group that's called description. So we're going to twirl that triangle shut, so we don't see all the pieces. And the phone body layer, we're also going to twirl shut. All right, moving content between layers. Right now, everything lives on that original layer, and we need to start putting it in layers that make sense. In our artwork, with our selection tool, click on the text that says for sale $450,000. And that's going to select a whole group. If you pop back to your properties panel quickly, you'll see that indeed right up here at the top it says group. It's the text and that background gradient. Go back to your layers panel. Notice that the phone body layer name has been highlighted and selected and indicated. So we know that it lives in this group somewhere. If we want to move artwork from one layer to another, we can either drag that selected art indicator or to the right of each sublayer. Oh, to the right of the sublayer or the individual pieces. So whatever that indicator is, we can drag that up to another spot. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to drag this little blue box that tells us that we've selected these two pieces on our artboard, and we're going to drag it up to the phone body. So we're going to go from here, whoops, not phone body, design content. Drag it up, and when it lands up here and it lights up green, design content, let go. If we twirl it open, we see that we now have a group living on this layer, and if we twirl it open, it's all of this stuff that we have selected over here. For sale, 450,000, the gradient behind it all, and the size. Okay, so twirl those shut, and you can tell that you dragged it up into that layer. Deselect on your artboard, and you can twirl those shut so that we just have our main 4 layers. Twirl open the phone body to show the layers underneath it. We're going to click on the top group item to select that in the phone body. We're going to hold down the Shift key, and we're going to select the image, 2 things down. And by holding the Shift, everything in between the first one and the last one you click on is selected. We could have held Shift and clicked all 3. That would have been easy. But if there were 19 of them, if you click the first one, hold Shift and hold the 19th, everything in between gets selected. So with those 3 things selected, we're going to drag any one of them, all 3 are going to go, to the design content layer. So this goes up to design content. When it highlights, meaning it's inside it, let go. Twirl the phone body shut. So when you're making something in Illustrator from scratch, you're quite often thinking, okay, this should be on its own layer so I can easily find it and deal with it later. If you forget, the point is you can always move it from layer to layer. You're not stuck with what you set up originally. Okay, viewing layers. In our layers panel, we can hide layers and sublayers and individual objects. We have these eyeballs next to everything, just like in Photoshop, where you can turn them on or off. We can also show things. Remember outline mode? Do a Command Y on your computer, and you're going to see the basic outline of this document. No fills, no colors, whatever. So sometimes you want to see things in outline mode, but not everything in outline mode, just a layer at a time, and that's doable as well. So Command Y. Do you guys see anything in outline mode that you don't see in preview mode, in normal mode?
4 icons.
Yeah, these 4 icons down here are obviously hidden behind this green rectangle in our stacking order. So we wouldn't even know they're there until we go into outline mode and see them. All right. When you're in outline mode, Command Y, go back to that, notice that the eyeballs over here in your layers lose their pupils, basically. They're just an outline telling you that you're in outline mode. Go back, Command Y, and they get filled in with pupil. Design content. Let's twirl it open to reveal what's underneath. We're going to hold down Command and we're going to click on the eyeball of that. It is now in that layer only is in outline mode. Notice that other things are still showing colors and whatever. So Command clicking on an eyeball turns everything in that particular layer into outline mode. Everything on other layers stays visible as is. Go back into that, so Command click on the eyeball, and now we can see the icons down here at the bottom. Take your selection tool and click on any one of these icons down here, and that's going to select all 4 of them and the rectangle behind it. And then to find out where that is in our layer stack, we're going to go and hit on the magnifying glass at the bottom of the layers panel that says locate objects. That shows us that those icons in this background are in the layer called phone body. They're in this group, and here they all are. Here's all the pieces that make it up and the black rectangular path that's behind them all. We're going to cut this out of this layer. So we're going to do an edit, cut, Command X. That just takes it into virtual memory. It's somewhere, and we can paste it again if we want to. We're going to hide our design content layer, twirl it shut, and we're going to twirl shut the phone body layer both. Where we want that stuff to go is our menu icons layer. So select that, so it's highlighted, menu icons, and then we're going to do an edit, paste in place. That's going to exactly put it where it was before, whereas a normal paste throws it in the center. So an edit, paste in place, that's now in this layer, which is up higher and probably more visible now. So you select a layer before you create content to put in it or paste content into it. We're going to command click on the eye icon by the design content layer. So command click on this eyeball to bring it back to full visibility, not just in outline mode. And we can see that those things are still hidden now. Those icons are still underneath the design content. We're going to fix that next. We lost them down there at the bottom. So just like in Photoshop, you can reorder layers, drag them around, and they have that stacking order. Let's twirl open design content using this arrow. We're going to now, this time, instead of holding Command, we're going to hold something different. We're going to hold the Option key, and we're going to click on the eyeball to the left of the design content. So Option, and click on that eyeball. What'd that do? Can you guys see what happened?
Made everything else invisible.
Yep. It literally made these other 4 layers go away. They're turned off, but it kept the visibility of the one that we're on. Okay, hiding all layers except those that you want to work on can be useful. With our selection tool, click in a blank area away from the artwork to make sure that nothing is selected. And then you need to be able to see this photo on the left of the image. So if you need to use the hand or space bar to get your hand tool and move it over a little bit, make sure you can see that picture. With our selection tool, we're going to drag this image onto the artboard, and we're going to hold Shift while we do it so that it stays in that same level point. So take this, start dragging, hold Shift. Why did you, what? Okay, you're being naughty. Honestly. Since it's not cooperating for me, and kind of center it like that. Notice that in our design content layer, because that's the layer that we last had highlighted, when we brought something off the artboard onto the artboard, it went into the layer that we had currently active, which was design content. So here it is. Notice here's the image, and it's got the indicated button right here, art indicated. All right, this is stacked wrong, so we need to do Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Now we can start to see the information through that. Click away to deselect that photo. And we're going to twirl shut the layer of design content. All right, now we're going to go up to our layers menu, which is the 3 lines up here. and we're going to go down to say show all layers, because right now if we look at our layer panel, we have 3 of them completely blanked out. So instead of turning them on using the eyeballs up here, we're just going to say show all of our layers. Now they're all back and our eyeballs are all back right here. That's another way of doing that. Design content layer. Make sure that that one is selected. And we're going to select another one. We're going to hold down the Shift key and click on the menu icon. So both of those are selected. Okay, we're now going to move these into the layer called phone content, and they're going to be sublayers within it. So with both of them selected, we're going to click and drag. And if we were to get this line between the two, that would put those 2 layers between those. We actually want to have the word phone content highlighted, meaning that when we let go, it's going to go inside there. So when you get to phone content, let go of them, and now those 2 things, the design and the menus, are nested inside of it. 2 sublayers. Okay, another thing you can do to streamline your artwork, you can merge layers, sublayers, contents, or groups to combine them into one single layer or sublayer. I got to leave that. I think phone content was where we were, right? That should still be highlighted. Anything that you merge into the layer or group, it will be merged into the layer or group that you selected last. So that's important to know. So to the left of the phone content layer, we're going to twirl to hide it. And we're going to twirl open phone body. We want to show that one. All right, inside the phone body, we're going to click on the path object that has a circle next to it. So under phone body, we have compound path, 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 path. The middle path actually has a circle next to it. We're going to hold down Option and click on this one. So Option, click on that one. Doing that selects it on our artboard. And you can see that it's selected in our layers. But it's right here on the artboard, so we know what we're working with. This can be helpful if you're looking at content in the layers panel and you want to select it on the artboard. So by holding Option and clicking, it's going to select it on the artboard. All right, so we're in the phone body layer, and that layer is selected, and we have this path selected. We're going to Shift and hold down to select the path above it. See, all these names are bad. If they were named circle and rectangle and bar, it would be a lot easier. So Shift click to select the one above it. And we want to collect these 2 things into a new layer. So with them selected, we're going to go up to the menu icon, more information up here, and we're going to choose Collect in New Layer about halfway down. So it collected them, and it put them in something called Layer 6. We're going to double click on Layer 6 and rename it, and we're going to call this Front. Click to deselect everything, so just click somewhere on your artboard, and we're going to do a save at this point, or actually save as. So File, Save As, we've never named this. Give it your name, and then real estate. By the way, I want to show you this window that pops up the first time you name something. We've just been saying okay and moving on. If I didn't mention before, this is where you can backwards save your file. So if you're working with someone who only has CS4 and you need to save it backwards compatible, this is where you could do that. If that's not an issue, you can always just jump right through the screen and say okay. All right. Duplicating layer content. Just for kicks, I want us to turn off the eyeballs on everything except for this front piece. guess we can't because I need to turn on the phone body layer. So this thing that we made, that we collected those two paths and named it front, it basically is the home button down here and then probably the little speaker, the thing that represents that. That's what those two pieces were, if you're wondering. Go ahead and turn everything back on and let's twirl that shut. Okay, we can also use the layers panel as a way of duplicating layers and other content. We're going to duplicate that front layer, so twirl open your phone body and highlight the layer called front that we just made. We're going to duplicate that and move the content of it over here onto this artboard. All right. With the front layer highlighted, I have mine spun shut. We're going to drag it down on the Create New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. So I'm going to click and drag it down onto the Create New Layer, and then I'm going to let go. And I just made a front copy. We're going to rename that one, double click on the words, and rename it back. Whoops, it'd be good if I spelled it correctly. Again, there we go. So we now have front and back, they both have that same content. They have this little speaker line and they have this little home button line. That's the only thing on them. Okay, the compound path object at the top of the phone body, this thing right here, also needs to be in both the front and the back layers. This one thing needs to be moved to both of them. So we're going to drag a copy into the back sublayer, and then we're going to drag the original one into the front sublayer. So select the compound path. By the way, it's this outline of the phone if you're wondering what it is. Select that, and to make a copy of a layer in anything, Illustrator, we hold down the Option key while we're dragging. So we're going to hold down the Option key, and we're going to drag this into... Where are we going first? The back version. So drag a copy until the word back highlights, let go of your mouse, and then the Option key. If you twirl open back, we now see that it has the compound path. That's good. You can twirl back shut. Now we have the original compound path, and we just want to move that into... hold on, I think I'm jumping ahead. Let me back up to make sure I'm doing this in the order of the book. We dragged it there. Yep. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to move this back sublayer onto Artboard 2, because if you look at it, if I zoom out here, Artboard 2 has nothing, right? And this is the back of the phone that we ultimately need to get this here. Right now it's doubled up on Artboard 1. So click the selection column over here to the right, the far right of the back layer name, to make that box bigger and light up. Even if you already see that color box, which I did, it was just small, click it again to select all of the content on that layer. So if we spin it open, all the content is indeed selected. All right, from our navigation, Artboard navigation at the bottom left, go to Artboard 2 to make that the active artboard. So it is now centered on your screen and it's the active artboard. And go to our properties panel. Before we move this, we want to tell it, or as we move it, we want to tell it how to align. In the align section, about halfway down on your properties panel, that very first icon is our drop down to how we want to align. Do we want to align to selection, a key object, or an artboard? We're going to align to the selection. So change that one to say align artboard. Oh no, we want it to be the artboard. My bad, I was reading that wrong. It assumed the other one was the default. We are aligning to the artboard. So click on that and say align to artboard. Also, horizontal align center. So this one, horizontal align center. Takes the selected artwork, it knows it has to go to Artboard 2 and be selected horizontally in the center based on the artboard. Everybody get that moved? Yep.
I don't even have the align line or showing.
In your properties panel,
Yeah.
you don't see a line. If not, go to Window and put a check mark next to a line. Got it? Yeah, every now and then stuff like that happens. All right. Go back to your Layers panel. Instead of being in Properties, go back to Layers. Click now to select this compound path layer that's not in the back layer. We can actually twirl the back shut. Now we have the compound path, which is the outline. We want to select that. And we're going to drag it into the front sublayer. Just drag it down here into the front to put it on that one. So if we twirl open back, we have three pieces: the outline, the speaker, and the home button. And if we twirl open the front, we have those same three pieces: the outline of the phone, the thing that looks like the little speaker, and the home button. Those are the three pieces in both. Let's do a Fit All in Window, Command Option 0. Click to deselect so that there's nothing selected, and we're going to save our file at this point. Okay. Pasting layers. So to complete the design of this app, we're working on an app for a phone, doing a mock-up for it. We need to copy and paste some artwork from a completely different file. So we can paste a layered file into another file and keep the layers intact. So we can go grab something that has 15 layers in another file, paste it in this one, and all 15 layers come intact, ready to go. All right, let's do a file open. We need to go back into our book files, and we need to open the menu.ai file, the Illustrator file. And once it opens up, I want you to look at your Layers panel and realize that there's a whole bunch of layers involved here. We have text. Does this seem odd to you that when we twirl open text, we see all these different paths? And there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines? Here's why. Go into the outline view, Command Y. None of this text is editable anymore. It's not a font. You can't change it. They highlighted the name of it and told it to create outlines. So all these are shapes that look like letters filled with a color. So there's a lot of compound shapes. This is not editable anymore. The cool thing about this is when you give it to somebody, say they don't own this font. It's no longer a font. It's just shapes. You don't need to send a font along. They don't need to own it. They also can't botch it up. They can't accidentally hit the type tool and misspell a word because it's not editable type anymore. So sometimes when you're done with a design, you do turn all of your type into outlines for safety and for the sake of not having to send a font along with it. It's not a font. Okay? So that's why there's so many things underneath that text. So let's twirl that shut. Twirl it all shut and go back into regular view, Command Y. All right. We're in the Layers panel. We're seeing how they're organized. And we want to collapse both layers. We've already kind of looked at that to see what they're about. Both layers are showing and they're collapsed. And we want to do from our menu item, we want to do a select all. That's going to select everything on all of these layers. Could have done it other ways, but that did the same trick. Select all. And then we're going to do edit copy. That's going to put a copy of all of those different layers into virtual memory right now and wait for us to do something with it. We can actually close this file, so you can click on the X and don't save it. We're done. In our original file, the real estate app file that we're doing, before we move on in our Layers panel, we need to go up to this menu option to the top right of Layers and open that up. And we need to come down where it says Paste Remembers Layers. We need to click on that. If we don't know if it's on or off, go back and look. As long as there's a check mark in front of it, it's on. So that's saying that when we do paste something, it's going to remember all the layers. That's important that we do that before we paste. Okay? So do that. And then we're going to do an edit, paste. And it's going to plop it right in the middle. But it's going to plop it with all of its different layers intact. Over in our layers panel, make sure that the text layer is the one that's highlighted at the top. It should be. And we're going to hold down Shift and we're going to click on the background layer to select that as well. And the phone content layer, we're going to twirl open. You can twirl shut body if that's too messy. We want to have phone content layer open, twirled open. And we're going to drag either one of these layers down on top of the main menu sublayer to move it into that. So grab either one. They're both going to go. Drag them down until main menu completely lights up, not just underlined, and let go. That moved all of that into the main menu layer. And we can click away to deselect on our artboard. Okay, the layer stacking order we can change as well. We've talked about that. We can easily drag them around. The main menu layer, let's twirl shut so we don't see those two pieces. We just see main menu. We're going to click on the design content layer and we're going to shift click on the main menu to select all three of those in between, or the one in between, so we get all three chosen. It was one that we built many steps ago, so if you don't have it, okay. Just keep working along. Okay. Yeah. Here's the other thing. What if the stacking order of these is upside down? The main menu needs to be on top. The design content needs to be on the bottom. We know how we can drag those around, but what if it's 15 things and they're in the exact wrong order and we want to tip them? Do you really want to do that? Or one by one, drag them around? No. So there's this cool feature that just does it for us. In our menu, layers menu option box, we have an option to reverse the order. So click on that, and that's going to reverse them. It's only 3. It wasn't rocket science, but if it's 15 or 20 layers that need to be reversed, that is rocket science. That works. Okay, we're going to click on the selection column to the far right of the main menu name to select all that layer content. So click over here so that you get that pink square lit up. And then we're going to use our selection tool. Notice that it highlighted this whole chunk. Our whole menu got highlighted. We're going to drag this content onto the artboard on the left and make sure it is below the address part right here. So we're just going to drag it over here onto our artboard and let go. Click away to deselect it. Okay, so now we have our menu bar plopped on top of all of this, and it kind of covered up some things, and it's kind of not behaving the way we want it to. We're going to apply an appearance attribute, and this is actually a later chapter where we are going to learn this in full. So I'm just demonstrating it basically. But appearance attributes are pretty cool. You can apply them to a whole, if you apply them to the layer itself, we're going to apply an opacity. So we're going to make that see-through. If we apply it to the whole thing itself, everything inside it gets opacity applied to it. If we target just one item inside, opacity gets targeted to just that one item. So you can control what it affects. All right. Twirl open your main menu sublayer so that you can see both of the pieces. And we're going to click on this open circle, which is the target icon, to the right of the background sublayer. So click on this. When it's open, it's not being targeted. When it has a double ring, it's being targeted, or a triple ring, and when it's filled in, it has something applied to it. So by clicking on that circle on the background, we made it be targeted. So now we can apply something to it. All right, Properties panel, jump back to that. In the Properties panel, we have opacity right here, and it's set at 100%. We're going to either drag that down or down arrow it or type in, however you want to do it, 75% opacity. Go back to your Layers panel, and you now see that that circle has a double circle that's grayed in. There is something, some sort of appearance attribute being applied to it. And in our case, it's opacity. It's a little bit of see-throughness. Okay, on your artboard, click Away to deselect. Okay, we're almost done, but this looks pretty messy. If you were to give this to a mock-up to somebody, it looks pretty messy, right? What about it makes it look crappy?
You got everything stacked on top.
And yeah, the stack actually, believe it or not, right now, this is how they want it to look, even though it's covering up the price. Like, I'm sure that seems wrong. But what really is wrong is that it's off the phone, right? This is the border of the actual phone. So if you were giving somebody a mock-up, you would want it to fit inside the phone, or probably even more specifically, inside of the part that shows images. This phone has a border around it, like the old school phones like mine. So in order to get stuff to fit inside a shape, we make a clipping mask. And how we do that is we make a shape, and then we put it at the very top, and we tell it to be this clipping mask, and everything underneath it has to stay inside it. And the rest of it disappears, gets chopped off. That's basically what a clipping mask is. All right, in our Layers panel, let's go back to that, or we are. Twirl open phone body, and hide everything else. So phone body is the one twirled open. And we have a layer named Path. This one is, let's just turn off the eyeballs of everything else. And to do that, you click on that eyeball, and then click on that and that. So, whoops, path went away. The path, I'm not seeing it, is the whole rectangle. Never mind, I was hoping to show you something, but it doesn't exist. So this is the whole rectangle that we're ultimately going to use as our clipping path. Right now it's at the bottom of the stack. It can't live there. It needs to be at the top of everything. So we're going to drag this onto the phone content layer first to put it in the phone content layer. So drag it up to that layer and let go. And you can twirl shut the body again. And then twirl open phone content. It plopped it at the very top because it's the last thing. So here's that path now. It's right here. So in the Layers panel, a masking object, the shape that you're going to have stuff fit into, has to be above everything that it's masking. So it has to be the top thing in the stacking order. So that's why we have it up there. We're going to hold down the Option key, and we're going to click on the Path object here to see it on our artboard. So that rectangle that we couldn't see before, here it is. Do you guys see it over here? It's basically like the actual screen part. That selects our content on the artboard. You don't need to do that to make a mask. We just did it so that we could actually see what it is. You don't have to select it first, is the bottom line here. So we can deselect. We now know what it is. We can click to deselect. And to make this path, this shape, be our clipping thing, clipping mask, we have it highlighted here. And now we're going to go down to the bottom. Let me do that again. Why is it not an option? phone content layer, my bad. Pick the whole layer. We have to pick the whole entire layer that everything is on. The very first thing is going to be used as the clipping mask, and we're going to go down to the bottom and we're going to click on the icon that looks like overlapping squares. Make release clipping mask and click on that. And by doing that, it changed the name up here. That shape turns into the clipping path and everything fits inside it. So it cleaned it all up. Yeah, I would agree. And just to add to our stress, Illustrator and Photoshop behave a little differently. In Illustrator, it has to be on top, and Photoshop has to be. But that's how you do it. As long as it's the top thing in that layer grouping, it will turn into the folder. Yep. I think your path is just moved. Like when you selected it, you must have kind of bumped it around and moved it. Option click on path. Yeah, see where it is?
Okay.
Move it back where it needs to live. And then it will work.
Okay.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Let me pause.